What's going on, guys? Dare here with Fantasy Football Advice, coming at you with another fantasy football video. Today, we're going over some tight ends, with many of you already having completed your drafts and some of you with them coming up very soon. What better time to go over the tight ends that you should have drafted? Before we do get into the video though, stat of the day. Yesterday's stat of the day was during the fantasy playoffs last season, which running back was the highest scoring for fantasy? The correct answer was Kenyon Drake. Congratulations to Julian Connor, you got this one right. As for today's stat of the day, just one team has ranked bottom 5 in points per game in each of the last 2 seasons. Which team is that? Leave your answer in the comment section down below. We'll be happy to let you know who wins in tomorrow's video. Also, guys, if you have not yet had your draft, the season starts 2 weeks from today. So consider signing up for our draft package. We have player breakdowns on all draftable players. You'll get access to our rankings, sleepers, targets, busts. We have risk ratings, offensive line rankings, and more. So if you want to set yourself apart from your opponents, consider signing up for our draft package. You can find more information on that at our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. Link, as always, in the description box below. Without further ado, let's hop right into the video, and we do want to give an honorable mention to Mark Andrews. He is being drafted somewhere between the 3rd and the 4th tight end off the board, which is a pretty expensive price tag, and we're not going to also break him down because we've broken him down about 1,000 times throughout this offseason, but it is worth noting he led all tight ends in deep targets despite playing on just over 40% of the total snaps for his offense. His snap share was very close to Hayden Hurst, who played in just 2% less snaps than he did, and the top tight ends like George Kittle, Travis Kelce, these are players that are getting around 90% of snaps. So for Mark Andrews to finish as high as he did in fantasy points per game while only playing on such a small snap share, his upside, now that they got rid of Hayden Hurst, his upside's massive. So like I said, honorable mention to him, but let's get into the first player. The first player we have is Noah Fant of the Denver Broncos. Now this is an athletic monster. If you look at him on playerprofiler.com, you're probably going to be surprised at exactly how athletically gifted this player is. He has first round draft capital, of course, a 98th percentile 40-yard dash, 97th percentile speed and burst scores, 96th percentile agility, and a 98th percentile catch radius. As we know though, athletic measurables don't always translate to production on the field, but when it comes to Noah Fant, what we saw from him in a limited capacity in his rookie season, it gave us a lot of hope for what we could expect for the 2020 season. For starters, he ranks 7th in yards after catch, 300 yards to be exact, so when comparing his total receiving yards of 562 and saw that 300 of them he was able to do on his own, that's very respectable. He's the type of player who doesn't need a ton of volume in order to perform, and at the tight end position, that's exactly what we're looking for. He ranks 2nd in yards per reception, 16th in total target distance, so we know he's getting targeted somewhat deep downfield. We know that once he catches the ball, he's able to do a lot with it, and last season his catchable target rate was only 73.1%. So if we're expecting Drew Lock to be very good this season, take a step forward for this offense overall, we could see that catchable target percentage look a lot better than what we saw in 2019, which could make Noah Fant that much more reliable for us for fantasy. The Broncos offense also added plenty of pieces offensively like Melvin Gordon. They also drafted Jerry Jeudy in the first round, one of the most NFL-ready wide receivers. So an increased amount of weapons is overall going to increase the potential scoring opportunities for this offense. Red zone targets are likely to increase for Noah Fant. And for most tight ends that are being drafted in this range, it's usually touchdown or bust. Knowing this offense overall is going to see more red zone opportunities is going to increase that chance that Noah Fant scores on a weekly basis. We've already established that he doesn't require a touchdown in order to produce. He's being targeted pretty deep downfield. He does a lot with the ball after it's in his hands, but even considering all of those factors, having those additional weapons on the offensive side of the ball is going to make it that much more difficult for defenses to hyper focus on Noah Fant, which could increase his overall opportunities as well. Now don't get it mistaken, I'm not saying this is going to be a perfect pick. If you're drafting Noah Fant, you probably have to be ready to stream or have a back-end option to play the matchups, but he's currently coming off the board as the TE14, which is incredible value. He has the upside to finish as a top 8 player at his position. He has all of the signs that we're looking for in a player who could take a massive step forward from year 1 to year 2. So overall, if I'm in this range and I have not yet drafted a tight end, Noah Fant is definitely a player I'm looking out for. One thing that could ultimately hold back Noah Fant, though, is the overall opportunities for this offense. We know it has a strong defense. They added Melvin Gordon to have a consistent running game. And with a young quarterback that's still developing like Drew Lock is, I'm sure they don't want to rely too heavily on his arm. They would rather rely on slowing the game down, relying on their defense, running the ball with leads late in games. So it's not like we're expecting the Denver Broncos to be near the league leaders in pass attempts per game. But on the next player that we're bringing up, that's something we can almost guarantee. The next player we have is Hayden Hurst of the Atlanta Falcons. Now, as we know, the Atlanta Falcons have always been near the top of the league when it comes to pass attempts per game. They run a very pass-heavy offense, and that's been something consistent we've seen throughout Matt Ryan's entire career. Matt Ryan currently ranks 11th all-time in total pass attempts. Even a quarterback like Matthew Stafford, who is also pass friendly, he's compiled about 1,100 less pass attempts despite being drafted just 1 year after him. You've heard us mention in previous videos how much opportunity is available on this offense when compared to last season. They rank first in overall vacated targets. A large portion of those targets were going to the tight end position. The total targets vacated come in at 258. 97 of those were Austin Hooper's. And with those targets, Hooper was able to translate that into a TE6 finish. He did only play in 13 games though, so if you actually look at what he was able to do on a per game basis, it was even more impressive. He finished as the TE3 in fantasy points per game and ranked 5th in red zone targets. Ranking 5th in red zone targets on just 13 games means he had the potential to lead the league in red zone targets had he been able to play a full season. All of these factors, they're very important signs from what we could potentially expect from Hayden Hurst as we head into 2020. We can't always just translate what we saw from Austin Hooper and just give it all to Hayden Hurst one for one. It doesn't really work out that way. That's one of the reasons why we love Calvin Ridley, because to be fair, Hayden Hurst, he's never really proven it yet. Does he have the ability? Definitely. He is athletically gifted. Matt Ryan has already come out and stated publicly, and I quote, "Hayden Hurst is one of the fastest and most athletic tight ends that I've ever played with." Matt Ryan has also been quoted saying things like he has great speed, athleticism, wants to be a great player, the effort and attitude is all there, and that he fits in well with the other group of guys that they have. And also that he is just straight up a mismatch problem. Now, with Matt Ryan gushing over exactly how talented this player is, we could chalk up some of it to just offseason hype, but what's undeniable outside of the ability is the opportunity. He's stepping into the perfect situation. If Austin Hooper was actually in the draft on the same team with the Atlanta Falcons, it's very likely he would be in that tier 2 of tight ends along with Zach Ertz and Mark Andrews, but right now we're getting a discount on Hayden Hurst, and where he's being drafted, it still comes in at a very good deal. On Fantasy Pros, they have him ranked as the TE9, but you have an even better discount on him if you're drafting in ESPN where he is the TE12. If you get Hayden Hurst as the 12th tight end off the board, you're getting an incredible deal and virtually are eliminating all risk factors associated with the pick. Before we do get into the next player, I do want to shout out that we do have extra episodes each week available audio only. This week we have Nick doing a Q&A. This will not be posted on YouTube, but it is free to access on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. So if you didn't know that we're posting extra content on there, go ahead and check it out. Subscribe, leave us a rating and review. We'd really appreciate it. So quick shout out to that. But on to the next player. The next player we have is Jonnu Smith of the Tennessee Titans. Now, I really love Jonnu Smith as a late round sleeper type of tight end. You're not going to be competing with many of your league mates in order to get him on your team, so drafting him just comes with a bunch of upside and virtually no risk. Fantasy Pros has him ranked as the TE16 in ADP. Then going over to ESPN, once again, we're getting a better deal. He's coming off the board as the TE20, so no matter who you really draft at the tight end position, Jonnu Smith is definitely a guy that you can get later. If you're drafting him as your TE1, you may want to invest in another option or be willing to stream the position though, because of course he's not a guaranteed thing, but when I'm leaving the draft, he's exactly the type of player with the amount of upside I'm looking for in a late round sleeper / flyer pick at that position. For starters, he is taking over the vacated spot of veteran Delanie Walker. This is the first year we're ever going to see Jonnu Smith leading this team from the tight end position because Delanie Walker has been on the team throughout Jonnu's entire career. We immediately saw his snap share on this team increase dramatically as soon as Delanie Walker went down. From week 8 on, Jonnu's lowest percentage in offensive snaps was 73%. Through 6 of his final 10 games, he played on 81+% of the snaps. That's great. Only 5 tight ends in the entire league last season averaged over 81% of offensive snaps, and Jonnu Smith was able to eclipse that in 6 of 10 contests. Jonnu's also been physically gifted. We've always known that about him since he was being drafted. We're talking 88th percentile 40-yard dash time, 84th percentile speed score, 94th percentile burst score, and an 82nd percentile catch radius. His most comparable player is David Njoku, and one of the most special things about Jonnu is the yak factor. Now, we always look at George Kittle as the yards after catch king. In 2019, a respectable 54% of George Kittle's total yards came after the catch, but when looking at Jonnu Smith, he was even more impressive. An astounding 63% of Jonnu's total yards came after the catch. The offense knew to target him on more shallow and intermediate routes and allow him to do most of the damage with his legs, and that's something we're going to consistently see from him from this point forward in this offense. Even though Delanie Walker was available for 7 of 16 contests last season, throughout the 2019 offseason and in training camp, they were preparing with Delanie Walker running with the ones. Jonnu Smith being the backup tight end, he didn't have that early opportunity to develop chemistry with Ryan Tannehill. Well, this year, throughout the entire offseason, they've come in with the knowledge that Jonnu Smith is going to be running with the ones. His chemistry and connection with Ryan Tannehill was beginning to develop towards the tail end of last season. We definitely are expecting them to build upon that heading into 2020. And if we're looking at the offseason moves of the Tennessee Titans, they fully committed with the idea of Jonnu Smith being the guy. They invested zero capital into any tight ends in the 2020 NFL draft. They also did nothing to bring in any significant weapons at the position in free agency. So the only possible way to look at it is a perfect storm of opportunity meeting ability. The final player we have on the list of tight ends you should have drafted is none other than TJ Hockenson of the Detroit Lions. Similarly to Hayden Hurst, Hockenson finds himself on a very pass-friendly offense. When looking at Matthew Stafford and his pass attempts per year, you can easily notice a trend. Excluding last season, since 2014, he has had no fewer than 555 pass attempts and no more than 602. So it max a variance of 8%, and that's a pretty significant sample, that being of 5 years. Now, Hockenson, we've already seen the upside he has when it comes to individual week performance. In week 1 of 2019, he caught 6 of 9 targets for 131 yards and 1 touchdown. That equates to 22.1 fantasy points in half PPR leagues, and that simply from the tight end position is a stat line that just very few tight ends even have in their wheelhouse. TJ Hockenson, in his first ever NFL game, showed he has the chops to do that, and you best believe that the Detroit Lions are well aware of what his ability is, and they're going to look to build upon that in 2020. They did not add any significant weapons through either free agency or the draft, and that's even with the understanding that Marvin Jones has not proven to be healthy over each of the past 2 years. Marvin Jones has missed 10 games out of a possible 32 in the past 2 seasons, so nearly 1/3 of the possible contests that he could have started in, he was unavailable for. And you best believe that if Marvin Jones misses any time for 2020, TJ Hawkinson's overall opportunities and target share percentage are going to increase pretty dramatically. Now, currently, TJ Hockenson is coming off the board as the TE13 in ESPN Drafts, FantasyPros.com. They have him ranked as the TE15, so you're not required to invest in him as a guaranteed or sure thing as your TE1 if you're looking for a high upside guy or are willing to stream the position. He's definitely somebody you should be looking out for in that range. You best believe that we have been targeting him in every draft in that range. I've already been able to land him on my team in one league I've already drafted in, so if you've drafted already, he's for sure going to be a guy you wish you drafted, and if you haven't yet, we 100% recommend that you be looking out for him. But guys, that's going to do it for this video. We really hope you enjoyed. If you did, how about hitting that like button? If you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. We thank you all for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.